In this session of Current Undercurrent, we are starting a new initiative whereby uh, we will be discussing a new issue every week, and we will not only be discussing, but we will be looking into all the 360 or the issue from all the 360 degrees. Now, today's topic that I have taken is about the simultaneous elections. Is it the need of time? Okay, so there can be various opinions and all those things, but why this topic? Specifically, if I have to say why this topic, then yesterday, Prime Minister of India, okay, I think uska dadi thoda kam ho gaya hai. So the Prime Minister Narendra Modi has again pitched for one nation, one election, saying elections for every few months hamper the developmental work. Okay, that is what the Prime Minister said in day before yesterday's one of the programs. And his speech also stressed on the single voter list for all the polls in the country. Well, today, that's why we are going to discuss, have an in-depth analysis of elections in India with particular emphasis on whether we need one nation, one election. Okay, so there is a lot of things that can be discussed in this topic. Like as we all know, that elections are the very important thing. Free and fair elections, rather free and fair elections, are very important thing when it comes to the survival of the democracy. And nowadays, what we are witnessing is that after every elections, there are some kind of acquisitions on the election commission or the election process, or somewhere other. There are other issues also, like whether some party is following the model code of conduct and all those things. But there are few certain very important issues that are institutional issues in the process of election itself. So what are those institutional issues? Like why I'm calling it an institutional issues is simply because they are related to the institution of election commission. So in today's lecture, we are going to decipher the two very important aspects about the elections in India. The first one is about the independence of election commission, and then we will move on to see what is the situation of simultaneous election. But before we begin, actually, we should be thankful to certain institutions like PRS India, which does a thorough research and provides us what you can say a ready-made material so that we can be using that. I hope if you are all the aspirants must be knowing about the PRS India, the kind of work that they do. They simplify the work for us, so we should be thankful to them. So at the start of video itself, I'm grateful to PRS India because a lot of work has been taken from there. Now, this issue of election, simultaneous election, is not new. Even UPSC in 2017 has asked a question on this. Okay, there are, I think screen is visible to you. And in 2017, the question was, simultaneous elections to the Lok Sabha and state assemblies will limit the amount of time and money spent in electioneering. So that is one part of what you can say, the question that they have asked, but it will reduce the government's accountability to people. Discuss. Now, this is what they have. We are expected. Now, they see we are discussing the topic in 2020, but the question was asked in 2017, and it was simply because the Law Commission had recommended, and from time to time since 2014, Modi government has always been stressing that there should be what you can say the simultaneous elections for the Lok Sabha as well as the state legislative assemblies. So the question was asked. There was another question on the institution of election commission in 2018. The question was, in light of recent controversies regarding the electronic voting machines, what are the challenges before the Election Commission of India to ensure the trustworthiness of elections in India? Now, both the questions were for 10 marks, but we can see that a significant amount of questions. We can expect the questions in the coming times also simply. And that's why we have to understand the topic not only from one facet, but from the single facet also. Okay, so today what we are going to do in today's lecture specifically, as I told you, we will cover two aspects. One, from the institution's point of view, where we will be analyzing the independence of independence of the election commission. And the second one is about whether we need a simultaneous elections or not. And after that, in maybe in 2 or 3 days, we will have another lecture where we will be discussing about the other aspects related to the election. So we can say that in 2 lectures, we will be able to comprehensively cover the topic of elections. Okay, so with that, we will begin with today's topic. But before I begin with today's topic, I would like to start with So one of the very important person. Just a minute, a slight adjustment. So coming back, so friends, we have seen two questions that have been asked on this thing. So again, I'm telling you, there are two sections with this topic. One that we are going to discuss today, and another one section where we will be discussing the other processes of the elections. Now, as you all are doing the UPSC and you have been preparing, many of you have already done the classes and all those things. So I don't think it is it is relevant to stress on those points as to why the elections, free and fair elections, are important, or what are the basic problems and all those things. What UPSC will expect from you is very constructive and at the same time a very constructive plus a relevant criticism, whatever it may exist. So we can see reflect that from the two questions that have been asked. One, where they say they agree, UPSC itself agrees that the state assemblies will limit the amount of time and money, but it will reduce the government's accountability. And in the second, they have raised the very common issue which is being talked about by the people a lot, about what is this EVM and all those things. So as I told you, again I will tell you, in this lecture there are two sections. One regarding the independence of judiciary, independence of election commission, and the second one will be about the need for whether there is really a need for having a simultaneous elections. But before I begin, I would like to start with one of the very famous what you can say historian, or a person, historian, or the most authentic interpreter of the Indian Constitution. That is Granville Austin. Granville Austin died a few years back, but his book, The Indian Constitution, Cornerstone of a Nation, I simply consider this book to be the most loved book, or one of the best books that you can have on what the Indian Constitution actually means. Okay, anytime when you get a time, anyways, if you get a time, do read this book. This book is not that big and all those things, but it is really a very interesting book. You should always read, as we say, some other books also. So this book actually gives us a larger insight into the Indian Constitution. Okay, so you must be all be knowing that Indian Constitution is also called as a social revolution. Okay, and that is just like common. If you're not knowing, then okay, let me tell you. Indian Constitution is also called as is a means of a social revolution. The political revolution ended with what after we got the independence. But what about the social revolution? So the social revolution is embodied in whatever the features that are there in the Indian Constitution. Now, I would specifically like to quote the Granville Austin over here. In his second chapter of his book, he speaks about the significance as to why it is a social revolution. And he speaks about through various ways we reach out to the Indian Constitution tries to fulfill the social revolution principle that is embodied into it. And in that, he speaks one important point that he speaks about is the universal adult franchise, or you can say adult direct election by adult suffrage. He considers this as a means of a social revolution. And what does he write into that? He says, economic progress making available to masses better food, clothing, and shelter was itself, of course, an objective of the social revolution. As a prerequisite, it was also a means for the material progress which would help to free the mass of Indians from centuries of mental and psychological stagnation and passivity. A centralized constitution might make this achievement possible, but the process at best would be a long one and would require and would material gain. National unity and government stability by themselves foster a fundamental alteration in the structure of Indian society. The most basic goal of the social revolution. So he says basically that will it satisfy it simply all whatever what you can say the national unity, government stability, or the structural changes in the Indian society. Was there a gong that is like just a metaphor, a single note whose reverberations might awaken or at least stir sleeping India? He says there was. There was direct election by the adult suffrage. This is what said by the Granville Austin in his book, The Indian Constitution, Cornerstone of a Nation. So just realize the significance of the voting, basically the right to vote that has been given by the Constitution, where he says that it is the means through which various things can be achieved in India, or the social revolution can be realized in India. And the means for that, or the tool for that, is the provision of direct elections as given in the Constitution. He further goes on to state, I hope this is visible to you, the Assembly has adopted a principle of adult franchise. This is actually from his book. You may not get time to read all the book, but I am putting a put over here. I'm putting some parts of it over here simply to create a base as to why this is important. The Assembly has adopted the principle of adult franchise with an abundant faith in common man and the ultimate success of democratic rule, and in the full belief that the introduction of democratic government on the basis of adult suffrage will bring enlightenment and promote the well-being. So this is important: enlightenment and promote the well-being, the standard of life, the comfort, and the descent of living of a common man. So realize these are the objectives that we have to speak about. Okay, as to why we have given the adult franchise, universal adult franchise. Okay, many of the democracies, they gave the franchise in a phases, but India, the time at which it became independent, it gave you the adult franchise. So what was for it? So if you are asked like what is the objective of adult franchise, then you can simply state to bring out what? Enlightenment and promote the well-being, the standard of life, the comfort and the descent of living of a common man. Adult suffrage, the acceptance of the fullest implication of democracy, was the most striking feature of the Constitution. This is what Granville Austin repeatedly telling you, and is written in his book. Adult suffrage gave a voice. I hope you realize, many of you must have voted in the last elections. I have been voting since long time now, but I'm older than you. But some of you may have cast your vote recently. So when you vote, you actually realize that it is your voice, that it is where your opinion actually matters in the democracy. Indeed, power. So that voice is what? It is a power. So vote is a power. To millions who had previously to depend on the whim of others for even a vague representation of their interest. Now, just to analyze the India before that. Okay, in many of my Indian society lectures, which you have attended, I have always stressed on the thing that just realize the moment of 1952 when the people in India are going to vote. Okay, this is for the first time in India. Okay, in the history of India, we don't know about the Harappan civilization as to whether there was voting or not, but we don't have any record which can say that there was a complete democracy as such, or a democracy where everyone was having the votes. Because Indian society's features, the most prominent feature is the caste system. And in the caste system, what we have seen is that there are various sections which deprive other sections. Either it is a privilege for some sections or it is a deprivation for certain sections. Now, with that basis, what changes? You can understand the change, immense level of change that is being brought down by this process of voting in India. And that's why, again, repeatedly telling you, this is not a small thing. Your vote counts. It matters because you can go to your representative, that you are electing, whether you may vote for someone who is not getting elected, but still you matter, because the person whom you are electing is supposed to put forward or is supposed to look for your interest. Now, whether that is done or not, that is other part. But from the institution's beginning point, we should realize how important it is then that the full free and fair elections become, that how important free and fair elections become in a democracy. I hope you are getting the point. Further moving on, from the same book, he says, direct elections brought or could bring the national life and consciousness to the individuals in the villages. Now, this is very, very important to understand, my dear friends. National life and consciousness to the individuals in the villages. Now, you must be knowing, Gandhiji always used to say, go to villages, whereas Ambedkar used to say, okay, villages are places. Dr. Ambedkar used to say, villages are the places where there is ignorance and you should get out from the villages. But simply understand the villages in India in 1950, what can be the characteristics of the villages in the 1950? Feudal, okay, oppressive kind of system was there. Okay, may not be in all the villages, but obviously it was there because there was a caste system, and there is a caste system even today, so it matters. Okay, but that individual simply just realize which elections are very, very dominant, Lok Sabha election or a Gram Panchayat election. When you speak about Gram Panchayat elections, they seem to be very, very fragile, and there is a lot of intensity involved. They are related to the people. So that consciousness about the people, like otherwise, what would have people thought? Okay, like if you are electing a member of parliament is going in Delhi. Okay, so there, what is happening in Delhi, common people are not knowing. But what we have done by the amendments, consecutive amendments in the constitution, we have even given the right to vote and directly elect a representative in the village. Now that has led to a very consciousness in the village. Somewhere or the other, there are again positives and the negatives, but just making that Gram Sabha a constitutional body and giving the right to vote to every section in that village has made the villages of India very vibrant in terms of politics. Otherwise, villages would have been neglected. So every common man, every person in the India is actually having a lot and lot of value. We all know that there are certain, like obviously there can be various type of classes are created in the society. Like we can have urban society, rural society. There are features attached to it. But when it comes to democracy and equality before the law, where is it that the equality before the law is realized? Now that is where the role of voting comes into existence, and that is what Granville Austin writes. And this book is very old. Again, I'm telling you, he has written another book actually on the review of Indian Constitution. But from the basic he speaks about, I hope by this you are realizing at least how it is a social revolution. And the second point, in a social revolution, what is the role of voting? And that's why from that basis we are going to pick up to realize why the election should be free and fair, or what are the limitations which make elections a restrictive force. Okay, the new awareness through a new channel of communication made possible new allegiances. Okay, basic, see what happened. Like today, if the voting was not given to each and everyone, let's say voting was given to certain people who are only educated. Like some of the states have done that. That for the Gram Panchayat election, you need to have certain degrees. But just understand, my dear friends, who was able to get education? It was only the privileged sections of the society, and that is related again to the caste. So to get rid of those, what we did, we decided every human being in India is capable of thinking what is good for him. And that will make Indian democracy survive. Otherwise, in India, people would have left out. People would have been left out. And if people would have been left out, then what would have happened? Obviously, the idea of national integration would not have been as it is today. So there are various implications of that simple thing, that is right to vote. You may take it very lightly, but then when I'm telling you, you may be realizing that this is something, a big phenomenon. And for India, it is very big phenomenon because we have a very big history. And when we are having a very big history, in that historical course, was a common person ever asked about, like Delhi, if someone is sitting in Delhi, is the emperor, Mughal emperor, or some other rulers, Delhi Sultanate, or you can say in the ancient times, was a common man in village considered to be a part of that system? Or was that only on the basis of territory that a person becomes emperor? No, in the modern days, a person does not become an emperor only, or a nation does not become a nation only by boundaries, but by the boundings of the people together. And that is what is very important over here. So national instead of local, thus creating an alternative to the caste and other purely local loyalties that impede national unity. Nowadays in village, if you have to get elected, you will find that you just cannot be a member of one particular caste. You just have to be, you need to take all the people together with you. Otherwise, if this would not have been given, or people sometimes they argue, like in India, universal adult suffrage should have been given in stepwise, not at the same time. But who decides that? Okay, who decides that? But the makers of the constitution were enlightened enough that they gave us the universal adult franchise, so as to make this, whatever the strengths of democracy today are, there are, or if you say why India survived, I asked when I was in reporting, and I had one of the colleagues working in the New York Times, and she was from that part, and we used to chat. So I asked her, "What do you think from your viewpoint? Like, what is the India's biggest achievement?" Now, for foreigners, even today, it is that India has remained united, because we all know that we can understand ourselves. No one else can understand us. Okay, so but that national integration, how it has been brought out, it has been brought out by that one thing, that is that the vote to each and everyone. So that's why it becomes very, very significant. Moving on, and if one local loyalty merely supplanted others as a result of direct elections, at least village society had a new fluidity. And yes, it is today. In many of the parts of India, again, there are loopholes into it also, like in northern India, Panchayati Raj system and all those things may not be realized at, may not be successful at that level. But if you have to say that if, what you can say, for the eradication of caste, there is significantly this contribution, there is a significant contribution of one vote system, vote or universal adult suffrage, because the one who needs the vote is also dependent on a person who he may not consider equal to him. So for eradication of the caste, also this one vote system has played a significant role. So there is Granville Austin. This is Granville Austin speaking about the Indian Constitution. I have just took out some part of his book, and again I expect that at least as go through this. It is available online free of cost also. Just go through some chapters of it. This is from that why it is social revolution, because until and unless you understand that, you cannot intensely understand what is the constitution, what the Indian Constitution is meant for. Okay, so this is what Granville Austin said. And now let's move ahead and let's start to speak about the election process in India, the direct election process in India. Now, you must have read Lakshmikant a lot. Obviously, in Lakshmikant Article 324, you have read, and we all know by under Article 324, we have what? The Election Commission of India. Okay, but there are certain things that now, obviously, I have given on the slide a lot of details. Don't worry about that. Okay, just certain parts we have to see. And if from this point, we have to speak about the independence of judiciary, the independence of the Election Commission. Now, see, superintendent's direction and the control of elections is to be vested in election commission. So Article 324 creates a constitutional body, that is what we call Election Commission of India. The superintendent's direction and control of preparation of electoral rules. So that is what the function of Election Commission. What is it? Superintendent's direction and control of, and also the preparation of electoral rules. Electoral rules, I hope you know, electoral rules means that these are the list of the voters, simply in simple terms, and the conduct of all elections to parliament and to the legislature of every state, to parliament and to the legislature of the state, plus election to the offices of president and the vice president held under this constitution shall be vested in the commission referred to this constitution as the Election Commission. So Article 324 of the Indian Constitution creates that Election Commission, defines its role, defines the functions of it. And in very simple layman words, we can say it is the conduct, it is about what you can say, conducting the election itself. That is the most important thing that Election Commission does. Okay, conducting the elections. And now, why you may say, why conducting the elections? Because India is a very big country, and in terms of population, you have say, you must have seen that Newton movie. And अगर आपने न्यूटन मूवी देखा होगा तो आपको रियलाइज होगा कि इलेक्शन क्या होता है इंडिया में. ओके, मतलब उस मूवी को देखना जरूर, बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है. मतलब टाइम मिले तो, अभी तो टाइम नहीं मिलेगा आपको, लेकिन कहीं जाएगा भी नहीं वो. तो न्यूटन मूवी में आपको रियलाइज होगा कि नहीं यार, इंडिया में इलेक्शंस एक्चुअली किस तरह से है. Okay, very remotest parts में भी हम जाके elections करते हैं. That is a success. And always remember, the transfer of power after the election in India has always been smooth. And that is, some credit has to be given because to the Election Commission, has to say, because simply say that transfer of power. Starting from 1952, in middle period, we had Indira Gandhi emergency and again another government coming into power. We had the leaders specifically had to worry about the people. Simply, leaders had to worry about the people because they knew that elections is the means, and if we go in some other ways, they will be overthrowing us. Like 10 years before, in 2009, the Congress, 11 years before 2009, Congress had won a very large number of seats, not up to the level of Modi ji, but had gone a significant seats. But after that, what we are witnessing is a complete decline of the Congress even today. Why? Because Congress has been considered, Congress is not accepted by the people. There was a policy paralysis. You may be small at that time, 10th or 12th, something like somewhere around that. But at that time, we were studying UPSC and we were knowing like, okay, every day some scam news case coming, whether they are true or false is not a debate. But there was a policy paralysis for sure, and people overthrew him. And Modi government showed, Modi ji specifically showed the hope to the people that we can bring out a change in India. And they voted for that change. And they voted in such a numbers, they are in front of him. And same happened in 2019 also. So we have to somewhere discredit, okay, of the process. If this process, why people believe into this, why we can say that there is no anarchic tradition in India. Okay, if you go through the history of the countries which became colonial after, which were decolonized after the Second World War, you will find India at the highest position in every other terms. Today, whatever the situation may be, but still the ideals of the constitution are preserved. And there comes the role of election commission again. Now, the second section in this article speaks about the persons involved in the election commission, and they are obviously the chief election commissioner and such number of the election commission, if any, as a person. This article, I will read it thoroughly again. It is very important for you to know this article and understand this article, because this is the most important article over here when we are discussing about the independence of the election commission. So let's see. The election commission shall consist of chief election commissioner and such number of other election commissioners, if any, as the president may from time to time fix an appointment of the chief election commissioner, and other election commissioners shall be subject to the provision of any law made in that behalf by parliament, be made by the president. So if a person has to, so for what is the point? For appointing the chief election commissioner, who appoints the chief election commissioner? Simply, or the other members of the election commission? It is the President of India. But President of India is bound to act in accordance with the Council of Ministers. So obviously it is the central government. And what is the constitution stating? That they should be appointed subject to the provisions made by the law, subject of any provisions made in that behalf by the parliament. So parliament was supposed to make a law for the appointment of election commissioners in India. Remember, just for now, just remember this. It is the responsibility of the parliament, because parliament is a consensus. If any bill is passed, obviously there will be opposition, but at the end it is considered to be a consensus. So it was expected from the Parliament of India that it should have created a law which will look into the appointment of the election commissioners. Now, as you know, there is no rigid mechanism for appointment of judges in the Supreme Court and the High Court. So Supreme Court devised its own mechanism, that is collegium system, which is neither constitutional nor statutory. So then again, the question of independence of judiciary, when it delays, we should start with what is the procedure for appointment of the judges. So similarly, over here also, the first very important point is regarding the appointment of the election commissioners, because these are the people who are responsible to conduct, to maintain the integrity of that institution, because that institution cannot fail at any cost. If that institution fails, the democracy and the India fails. Simply, if people tomorrow start to have complete disbelief, and like just take down, if people today even they are murmuring like EVM है घोटाला होता है, ये होता है, वगैरह वगैरह सब चीजें हैं, but ये जब ज्यादा लेवल पे जाएगा तो इसका आउटकम क्या होगा? What will be the outcome when large number of people are actually are believing in this context? So to stop that, we have to create, there has to be an accountability to that institution. Okay, now I will come to that point again, but before now, just a minute. Third point, when any other election commissioner is appointed, the chief election commissioner shall act as the chairman of the election commission. Before each general election to the House of People and to the Legislative Assembly of each state, and before the first general election and thereafter each biennial election, Legislative Council and all those things, no need, don't go into that. Now, for maintaining the independence of the election commissioners or independence of election commission, there are certain provisions which have been made under Article 324, Section 5. And they are the conditions of service and tenure of the Office of Election Commissioners and the regional commissioners shall be such as the President may by rule determine, provided that Chief Election Commissioner shall not be removed from his office except in the manner and on the ground as the judge of the Supreme Court. So he cannot be arbitrarily removed. Okay, very important point. The election commissioner cannot be arbitrarily removed by the government. So there is a protection to that. And why the protection has been brought into? Because he should act in a free manner. There should not be a political or executive pressure on him for certain things. Moving on, except in the manner and on the grounds as a judge of Supreme Court, and the conditions of the service of the Chief Election Commissioner shall not be varied to his disadvantages and is appointed, provided further that any election commissioner or a regional commissioner shall not be removed from the office except on the recommendation of the Chief Election Commissioner. So this provision, Article 325(5), maintains, is there, or simply you can state or write it down by stating that Article 324, Section 5 is related to the maintaining that independence of the election commissioner. So these are the provisions which are there in the Constitution. But again, remember, one point we are missing, that is appointment. We will come to that after the 6th point. The President or the Governor of a state shall, when so requested by the Election Commission, make available to Election Commissioner or to a regional commissioner such staff as may be necessary for discharge of functions conferred on the Election Commission. So nothing major over there. So I hope you have understood what does the article specifically mention over here. So let's try to find out a loophole in the article, and that loophole is not the loophole of article, but if we can say it is we the people, because we the people are represented in the parliament, we have not created a law for the appointment of election commissioners. The 3 members of the Election Commission, including the Chief Election Commissioner, are now appointed by the President of India. Obviously, as I have told you, they are appointed by the President of India, directly of India, indirectly by the central government. Why? Because President has to act in advice given by the Council of Ministers. So obviously, President is going to appoint someone as the Election Commissioner only when the Council of Ministers, headed by the Prime Minister, is going to give them certain provisions, certain names, and those names will be appointed as the election commissioners. So there is no other mechanism. Okay, like for appointment of judges, there is a mechanism developed by the judges itself, judges of the Supreme Court itself. What they do, the Chief Justice of India and 5 senior most judges, they comprise the collegium. Okay, they take the names and they appoint them as they give list to the law ministry, and then the President appoints them as the judges of the Supreme Court or the High Court. That is lacking over here. Okay, and for that, in 2000, generally, who was appointed as a Chief Election Commissioner or Election Commission members? These are the senior most IAS officers, very senior most IAS officers. Once they resign from the IAS, once they are retiring, they will be appointed as a Chief Election Commissioner. Now, understand, in this case, which I am going to tell you, in this case, it was brought forward that an IAS is supposed to work for the government, but Election Commissioner is not supposed to work for a government. It is an independent body. So in that case, it was highlighted that an IAS officer, when he resigns, he gives up his oath and he takes a new oath as a member of an election commissioner or as a chief election commissioner. So there are different rules. Now for that case, regarding in 2017, so one person accused the government of being impartial or being partial in the appointment of a chief election commissioner. Now, if the Chief Election Commissioner is appointed and there is a question on the Chief Election Commissioner itself, then God help us regarding who is to be appointed as the Election Commissioner. Then God help us in terms of having a faith in elections. That is as simple as that. Okay. So in 2017, a PIL was filed in the Supreme Court. This is very important. In Supreme Court, contending that successive governments failed in the constitutional obligation to set up a fair and transparent process for selection of election commissioners since the adoption of Constitution. Go back and see that again. What is it written in the Article 2? The President, the election commissioner, shall be appointed by the president, but in accordance to the law made by the parliament. Here is the point. The law is not made even today. Till date, there is no law which can assure you that by this law or this mechanism, law obviously created by parliament, or this certain mechanism which has some legal bindings to it, and we can appoint the election commissioner, but there isn't. So who is at the fault? So every government since 1952, even today, they have been appointing the election commissioners, okay, electional commissions, election commissioners arbitrarily. They are giving the name, president is appointing them. Now, in that same case, the Attorney General argued in the court that till date, we can find that election commissioners have done their work free and fairly, and that's why there is no need. So here, the case was regarding whether there should be a mechanism for the appointment of judges, appointment of election commissioners, to which the Supreme Court in its final judgment said that the parliament should make a law to it, but we cannot direct the parliament directly that you make a law regarding that. Okay, because they cannot, they say that we need a law for the appointment of chief election commissioners, but we cannot direct the parliament because that will be in the violation of the principle of separation of powers. Because judiciary can step down, judiciary can do many a times judicial activism is there, but this will not go good if tomorrow judges are telling to the parliament, okay, make a law. That should be from the public consensus. That should be from the consensus of the lawmakers. That okay, this if we are accusing the elections and election processes, it should begin with the appointment of election commissioner itself. But then this is the biggest loophole, and that questions the independence of election commissioner. So if today any party is saying, okay, that elections are not free and fair, they should introspect and they should say to it that how many times they have spoken about an creation of an institution or a mechanism for appointment of election commissioners. If they haven't, then what right do they have to question the election itself? That is the point. I hope you are getting it. Any questions up till now? Are you getting? In this case, the Supreme Court specifically observed on July 5, I just given the date for the reference that it was in 2017. Remember, you can give the name 2017 PI, responding to 2017 PI, the Supreme Court said this thing. That there is, however, a legitimate expectation in the Constitution of India, because Constitution has said it over there, as according to the law made by the Parliament. So there should be law which is stated by the this one, Constitution, that the election commissioners who are charged with free and fair conduct of polls in democracy should be appointed through a most transparent and just process. Very, very important line. Write it down somewhere. The appointment of the election commission, because you may worry about the judges later. Okay, but election commission is the most important institution. And there is the point. It should be most transparent and just process. So we can create, like for example, if you have to appoint certain members, there is a committee of prime minister, a leader of opposition, or leader of whatever, leader of opposition, or judges are involved. So that type of process can be created. So that is the first point that I wanted to stress upon. Formalized by law enacted by the parliament. So whether election commission is independent? Yes, it is, because so far what we have seen is that Indian elections have been, there hasn't been any time where the people have not conceded. The one who has lost has accepted it. One who has won, power has been transferred to him smoothly. It's not like what is happening in the United States right now. You know, even if he is defeated, he is saying that election was a fraud. So no one in India has said that even. Okay, they have accused EVMs and all those things. There are issues with that. But the credibility of the institution remains. But the credibility of institution needs to be maintained in the times to come. And that can be done only when you start with the very basic thing, and that is free and fair, or in the words of the Supreme Court, most transparent and just process. If you are able to do that, and obviously if a person is appointed over there, then we will be finding the elections in altogether different way. Okay, there was one very great election commissioner of India, T.N. Seshan. You must have heard the word of him. You must have heard about him. He was like considered to be a very significant election commissioner who brought out a significant changes in the election processes of India. Okay, making it more transparent, more free and fair. Okay, so I hope you have realized first point. This point I wanted to highlight specifically over here regarding the independence of election commission. That is, there is only one point, and you should be specifically writing about that. If you do, you have any questions?
Yes, sir. Hello.
Yeah, who is it?
Yes, sir. Can't judiciary enforce parliament to make law because it's constitutional duty?
Judiciary can see it is violation of then it is violation of the principle of separation of powers, and every time judiciary just cannot go down and just say you make a law. That will not sound good. Judiciary said that obviously I agree with you that if judiciary would have given the guidelines that you make, or a time limit that you make a law for the appointment of judges, appointment of election commissioners, that would have been good, it seems, because in spite of these mentions by the Supreme Court, government has, it doesn't seem that the government, any government has taken them seriously. So why judiciary is not giving, I think that should be left out to the consciousness of an individual judge. Okay, what the judge thinks about, because there will always be a limitation. Like as you say, I'll give you an example. What is the extent of judicial review? Can you tell me?
Judicial review only it depends on judge how it.
Depends on judge, right? So that has same way over here also. It is, I think, if other judge would have been there, I don't know what the judgment would have been there. So we leave it these kind of things to the judges. So these are like what about or what, when, why. So, but just what we are left out with is what the Supreme Court has commented, and you can just put this into your answer, and that will be a good answer. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Moving on. Let us, before going into the simultaneous elections, let us just compare the elections in other countries. So now we are moving on to the other part of the discussion, and that is regarding the simultaneous elections in the country. So we have to see how the elections are conducted in other countries. Let's take the example, like all these examples. In South Africa, national as well as provincial legislatures are held simultaneously for 5 years, and municipal elections are held every 2 years. Okay, so they are held separately, but the national and the provincial, you can say state over there, are held simultaneously. In Sweden also the same norm is there, but in Sweden they move ahead and the elections are held on a fixed date, that is second Sunday in the September, for 4 years. Okay, the elections will always be held in the second Sunday in the September. Even in case of United States, you will find every time it is fixed. When will be the elections held? Generally, it is 10th of the November, and the president will assume the office in the president-elect will assume the office in the January. So that is there existing all over there. In Britain also, the Fixed Term Parliaments Act 2011 was passed to provide a sense of stability and predictability to the British Parliament and its tenure. So that is the provision with the British Parliament also, that what they have done, that they have passed a fixed term. Like once you are elected, then obviously you will continue for the rest of the term. They may change the prime ministers in between. Okay, that is for the party to decide. But the assembly or the house itself will survive for the 5 years. Like in India, we have no confidence motion. But as you all know, no confidence motion can be brought into any time. So here we cannot say that the government will survive for the 5 years. The government may survive for the 5 years or may not survive for the 5 years. So here, basically, there is no fixed limit. Now that becomes one of the limitations for implementing what you can say one elections in India. Okay, if a party is having a full majority, then obviously it will survive. But just take the examples of the state assemblies. We never know when they will get when we can lose out on those. Now the articles in Germany also proposes a constructive vote of no confidence. Okay, constructive vote of no confidence. That means this is very important. Underline it. You can give this example. Write it down somewhere. What, like in no confidence motion that we are bringing into the house, what we do, we just put into a person or a prime minister generally, or his council of ministers, that they don't enjoy the confidence of the house. If the vote of confidence is passed, we can say that the government is out of the power. The present council of ministers, they are out of the power. But whether other person will be having the majority, we don't know. Okay, like if you know, in 1998 and 1999 elections were held simultaneously, because every 5 साल में 2-3 सरकारें होती थी, क्योंकि हर बार कोई ना कोई एक दूसरे के साथ अलायंस करता था और वो गिर जाता था. So तो हमारे यहाँ पे जो नो कॉन्फिडेंस मोशन है, उसको जनरली people say it to be a negative way. Okay, it is considered to be generally a negative way of a no confidence motion. So in India also, even in the Law Commission in its report in 1999, recommended a simultaneous motion of no confidence motion in the incumbent government, that is existing government, as well as the confidence of an alternative government by inserting Article 198A. That means what? The government which is now, for example, let's say Modi government is in power, and now the Congress, which is in no position to bring the no confidence motion, but hypothetically assuming is in the position, it thinks that it is now Modi government is not having any power, confidence in the house. So they can bring into the no confidence motion and they can defeat the Modi government. Agreed on that part. But what about who is going to get elected? So what happens over here? If no one is able to create the government, then the assembly dissolves. Lok Sabha dissolve ho jati hai. So what happens? The government does not continue for 5 years, and then again an election. So if that though, now what happens with this? You can see election commission has to be always prepared for that. Election commissioner will never be sure when we will be having the government, when we will have the elections and all those things. Or even the government may think now it is the right time to go for elections 1 year before the general elections. Let us resign and let's have the elections now. So that can also happen. That has also happened. The Vajpayee government in 2004, okay, resigned before 6 months, okay, from completion of their term. And what happened? Why? Because they felt that the environment is good in their chance and they will get elected. So the full term was not realized. So what here is stated that we should be having a full term where when you bring out a no confidence motion, there should also be a motion to bring in someone. Okay, so this is an interesting one. This is not there in your Lakshmika. Okay. Rules of procedure and conduct of business in the Lok Sabha to eliminate the need for midterm election and ensure stability of government. Okay, we want a government, we want a stable government for 5 years, whoever person may be. But for 5 years, the government should survive. That is the important point. So we can find there are examples of South Africa, Sweden, Britain, and I have taken these examples because these are parliamentary form of governments. I have not taken the example of United States because it is a presidential form. So there is altogether a different mechanism, but still there also you can find the elections altogether at different level. So that don't compare Indian elections with United States election. Okay, there can be certain grounds where we can compare, but not in these terms. If you are comparing, then it is wrong. There is a presidential system. Here you are having and a legislative system, parliamentary system. Moving on with this example, so we can say that this type of system has been successful in some of the in many of the countries. Moving ahead, let us see simultaneous elections in India. Now here I have given you a table. I hope it is visible to you all. In 2019, April to May 2019, Lok Sabha elections were held. The model code of conduct was started from March 10, 2019. This is last year's figure. मार्च के 10 तारीख को मॉडल कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट लगा, जिसको मराठी में हम जनरली बोलते हैं आचार संहिता. Okay, now after that elections, with those elections, the elections were also held for certain state legislative assemblies, and these states were Andhra Pradesh, Arunachal Pradesh, Odisha, and Sikkim. So in April, from April to May, we had Lok Sabha elections as well as state legislative assembly elections for 4 states. Sorry. After those, so once we have created the government into that, then again on October and in November we had 3 more elections, which is Haryana, Maharashtra, and Jharkhand. So elections in Haryana were held on 21st October. So let model code of conduct be 1.5 months before or 1 month before. So obviously the central government will not be able to act in that for time. Okay, for particular state and all those things. So Maharashtra government cannot start new initiatives and all those things. So see, it is for real that the need for simultaneous elections is there for sure. Okay, we cannot reject that by seeing this graph. Then Jharkhand was held in 21 October to 13th November. Then Jharkhand was held in December. So in a year, after the general elections itself, in 6 months' time, again you have to undergo an elections. Again, a whole system has to be worked out in that state. In 2020, 2 states, the Delhi in February and Bihar recently, you have the result also. In 2021, 5 states are supposed to have an state assembly elections, which are Assam, Kerala, Puducherry, which is UT, Tamil Nadu, and West Bengal. So that's where those elections will be somewhere around again April, May. But again, 5 states. So again, you can say the period of election. Let's take period of election to be 1 month and model code of conduct 1 month. So 2 months again we are going into the elections. Same is with 2022. In 2022, we can group actually. Some elections will be held in April, May. Some elections will be held around October, November if the houses continue as they are. They are Goa, Manipur, Uttarakhand, Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh, and Gujarat. And then by 2023, you have these many, almost 8-9 states which are going to go into an election: Chhattisgarh, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Telangana, Tripura, Rajasthan, Mizoram, Nagaland, and Meghalaya. So these states are, so I'm just giving you a picture as to how many times we have to conduct an elections. Again, in that J&K is left out, duty of J&K, because there is an emergency and we don't know when the elections will be held. But obviously someday the elections will be held over there also. So you can see how tedious the process is. Okay, so this is just to, now you don't need to remember anything. This is just to prove the point as to how tedious the job becomes in spite of having Lok Sabha elections. Okay, every year we can say almost around 2.5 months developmental work gets hampered. That's for sure. Okay, we are not going to argue on that. Okay, developmental work because of the election process that gets hampered. So every year 2.5 months. So if you are comparing 5 years, so in 5 years almost you are going, 1 year is completely going in the election process, and rest the government is having only 4 years to work into that, because new initiatives cannot be announced. You all know that there are various provisions. The ministers cannot continue, and that lot many things are there. So that is basically included in the model code of conduct. So before we going on to the elections, simultaneous elections need positives and negatives. Let's first of all analyze what is model code of conduct. Okay. Now, what is model code of conduct? The model code of conduct is in simple lines. This is from the PRS India, and they have given very in simple manner. The model code of conduct is a set of guidelines. Now, these are simply the guidelines which are issued by the Election Commission to regulate the political parties and candidates prior to the elections. Now, you all know India कैसा है, यहाँ कैसे elections होते हैं, सबको reality पता है. But उसके बावजूद हमें क्या करना है, तो candidates को regulate करना है. नहीं तो अगर candidates को अगर full permission दिया ना, तो वो रात भर भी बजाते बैठेंगे. ओके, वो भी कर सकते हैं. अभी हमारे यहाँ पे ऐसा है कि 10 बजे के पहले आपको बंद करना है, ये करना है. और देयर आर सर्टेन नॉर्म्स, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल आप कास्ट को नहीं ला सकते, आप धर्म के आधार पे नहीं बात कर सकते. अगर ये सब चीजें अलाउ कर दिया जाए तो प्रॉब्लम आप जानते हैं. तो इलेक्शंस फ्री एंड फेयर हो, जो इलेक्टर है, जो वोटर है, उसका माइंड भी फ्री एंड फेयर हो, इसी वजह से होता है मॉडल कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट. सो सिंपल ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ मॉडल कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट इज व्हाट? टू रेगुलेट द पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज एंड कैंडिडेट्स, एंड आल्सो टू कीप द वोटर in a state of mind, in such a state of mind where he can decide what is good for him. Okay, and for that we need to what you can say, that for that only the Election Commission invests a lot amount of time. Moving on, it helps Election Commission in keeping with the mandate it has been given under Article 324, which is to conduct free and fair elections. It has been given superintendent's direction and all those powers. The Election Commission is given that power. So for that thing, the Election Commission is there, which gives it the power to supervise and conduct free and fair elections. So model code of conduct is there. So conduct free and fair elections. You just think, tomorrow if candidate has if Election Commissioner does not give a model code of conduct and the party gives away a lot amount of money, then what is going to happen? There will be a problem. Okay, so to avoid those problems, जिसके पास पैसा है वही शायद से जीत के आएगा. तो इसको रोकने के लिए आपको कोई ना कोई मैकेनिज्म रखना पड़ता है. So that's why we have the MCC, we can say. MCC is the operational. It is now the technical part. Since the date of announcement of election, the model code of conduct comes into existence. So that is very simple. Prelims fact. Model code of conduct comes into existence from the date on which the election schedule is announced till the date of the result announcement. जिस दिन result announce होता है, उस दिन तक शुरू होता है जिस दिन elections announce किए जाते हैं. तो ये बीच में मैंने कहा जो 1-1.5 महीना से 2 महीने तक का पीरियड जनरली जाता है अगर स्टेट असेंबलीज के बारे में भी ये हो तो. So let's in brief see the evolution of the model code of conduct. This model code of conduct was first of all origins lie in the Kerala assembly elections of the Kerala in 1960, when the state administration, basically it came from the state administration, and state administration prepared a code of conduct for the political actors, that so Kerala created it, you can say, simply state, in 1960. Then subsequently in 1962, the Election Commission of India circulated the code to all the recognized political parties. So this code, which originated from the Kerala, taking the inspiration from them, the Election Commission of India, in the year 1962's general election, it issued all these, what you can say, it issued the code to all the recognized parties and the state governments. It was wholeheartedly followed. Now, 1962 was altogether different. In 1991, after repeated flouting the election norms and continued corruption, the EC decided to enforce MCC more strictly. And 1991 was the period which we can say simply that in that period, G.N. Session was the Chief Election Commissioner of India, where they observed that whatever the codes have been given in 1962 are not being followed, and as they are not followed, so what is the point? So they tried to created the model code of conduct, and they also looked into a stronger way or more effective way to enforce the model code of conduct. Okay, so that is a brief, what you can say, history of the model code of conduct. But let us also see some of the key provisions of the model code of conduct. Now, generally, there are 8 provisions in the model code of conduct, and they are related to the general conduct. Then that is Then the second one is meetings. The third one is regarding the processions. The fourth one is regarding the conduct on the polling day. Then about the polling booths. Then about the observers. Then for the party in power, whichever the party is there in the power. So obviously you have to have a special mechanism for them and a special code for them. And then election manifestos. So these are the major, what you can say, the major provisions, okay, that are there. We are grouping the provisions in the model code of conduct. So again, I will repeat, you need to remember this. What is model code? There is a question which is asked to me privately. But sir, there were instances where EC is seen as toothless tiger. How power of EC will be placed? Yes, again, Atish has asked me a question in privately, which I would like to answer over here itself. That Election Commission is seen as a toothless tiger. No, it is not a toothless tiger. It has a large amount of power. It can disqualify any candidate and all those things. But generally, what it does, it does not interfere when the process of election is happening, and it is simply because if the Election Commission starts to interfere every now and then the process of election will get delayed and it will be more time consuming than it is there. But Election Commission is surely not the toothless tiger. Okay, and how it can be empowered, as we discussed, it can be empowered by the first point that I told you, starting with having an independent mechanism to appoint the election commissioners in India. If you start with that, then obviously there will not be a problem. And then we can at least agree that there is an election commissioner who is agreed upon that this person should be there. He is not affiliated to a particular party or particular person. So that can be done. I hope you get your point. So again, I will repeat, the model code of conduct consists of 8 provisions. And these 8 provisions are generally regarding the general conduct, meeting, procession, polling day, polling booth, observers, party in power, and the election manifestos. And major provisions, let's see each of them in detail. The first one is general conduct. The criticism of political parties must be limited to their policies and programs, past record and work. Okay, so if you are criticizing a political party, you can criticize only on the grounds of policies and programs or the past record and the work. Now you can see what Prime Minister does. Prime Minister ने जो भी सभाएं की उनमें सबसे ज्यादा तो मतलब I think we have नेहरू जी, ओके, नेहरू जी की पॉलिसीज या इंदिरा गांधी की पॉलिसीज या फिर मनमोहन सिंह जी की पॉलिसीज और कांग्रेस एंड ऑल दोस, उनका रिकॉर्ड 7 साल का निकलता है और उस पर डिसाइड होता है कि ओके वो बताते हैं कि किस तरह से देश में कुछ भी नहीं हुआ. सो that's their way. Okay, so if the activities should not involve using caste and the communal life feelings. Okay, the government cannot, the one may be in power or may not be in power, cannot ask the vote on the basis of a caste or communal, that I am belonging to a particular religion, so vote me. That is not fair. Okay, and this is not according to the ideal of the constitution also. So directly you will not find, and if that is done, then obviously the election commission will consider that it is a violation of model code of conduct, and it will start looking into the matter. Criticizing candidates on the basis of unverified reports. Now in today's time it is very, very tricky, because we live in the age of social media where large number of things are penetrated to your mind through fake news and all those things. So if you are criticizing the candidate, it is expected generally by the model code of conduct that criticism should be in a constructive way and on the basis of some verified reports and not in terms of the fake news. But then again, you may ask me again, that, sir, ye to hota hai, I know it. But then what can be done? A lot of things can be done. But or then the next one is bribing or intimidation of the voters. जिस किसी ने भी elections deeply देखे हैं, you all know there is a problem in the Indian elections, and there are two major problems, and which are they? They are the money and the muscle power. Okay, money and the muscle power play a very significant role in the Indian elections, but it is according to the model code of conduct, this is not allowed. So if you see during the election times, many a times police people, they check the vehicles for the money and all those things, but still it again continues. But then still, at least we have a regulation on that. Organizing demonstration or picketing outside houses of persons to protest against their opinions are prohibited. So during election commission, you cannot just go outside the house of a certain person and say you are belonging to this party, so you are not allowed to vote. You should not be voting. So you cannot demonstrate in front of him, or you cannot just simply go and ask, "Tu isko vote kyun kar raha hai?" Okay, that is something individual right. Okay, so you cannot do that. Okay. Next point is regarding the meetings. The parties must inform all the local authorities of the venue and the time of the meeting. Generally, this is what you will be doing, and once you become an IAS, आप ही लोग होंगे जो इन सब पे watch रखोगे. Like let's say you will be in government by 2020 to conduct the 2024 elections, और उस टाइम पे आप ही ये करेंगे. तो so obviously venue and timing plus कितने लोग आने वाले, क्या आने वाले, what are the provisions, so any special security arrangements, ये सब फिर वो आपको बताया जाता है. Processions, obviously this is something like two parties cannot come together in front of each other. Just you can imagine like BJP और कांग्रेस के लोग किसी बहुत ही volatile constituency में एक दूसरे के साथ आ रहे हैं, procession, ये ईस्ट से आ रहे हैं, वो वेस्ट से जा रहे हैं, एक ही रास्ते पे अलाउ नहीं होगा. So it cannot be carried out in that way. Organization, there should be certain mechanism कि हर किसी को अपना अपना टाइम देना जरूरी है. Organizers must establish contact in advance to ensure that the processions do not clash. So नहीं तो वो आपको पता है ये आ रहा है वो आ रहा है, तो that is not the way in which we conduct the election. That will just lead to chaos. So that chaos is not justified. Okay, carrying and burning the effigies representing members of other political parties is also not allowed. Then what on the polling day model code of conduct says? All authorized party workers at polling booths should be given an identity patches. If you have seen if you have voted, then you must be knowing that it is done. It is done the people who are there in the booth, so that the bogus voting that happens many a times should not happen. So there are representatives of each party sitting in that booth, and these people in the booth are given the IDs. So any what you can say, to avoid any untoward incidents or to gate crashes nahi aani chahiye, iski wajah se wo IDs and all those things. So they should directly include the party name, symbol, or the name of the candidates. That is being stated. Polling booths, only voters with valid pass are allowed in the pass from the election commission, which is like voter ID nowadays, Aadhaar or PAN or any kind of ID. They are supposed to be given entry into the polling booths. Observers, these are like again the polling booths. The election commission will appoint the observers. Okay, like they are mostly SDM or DM. DM is at the very highest level, but tahsildars and all those things, to whom any candidates may report problems regarding the conduct of election. So every booth will also be having certain main person to whom you can complain, okay, this is not the fair practice that is happening in the booth. So these are there. Now, important point to which the Prime Minister has been stressing is regarding with the party in power. As Prime Minister is in power, so obviously Prime Minister is feeling that this kind of elections is hampering the developmental work. So what are the limitations to the party in power? Let's see that the Model Code of Conduct in 1979, it incorporated certain restrictions. Okay, it incorporated certain restrictions which were there to regulate the conduct of the party in power. Obviously, the power में होगा, उसके पास ज़्यादा weightage है, is at an advantageous position. So obviously, for that you have to regulate that, because like government अभी power में है, election होने वाला है, they announce certain new scheme. So that scheme is going to influence the voters. So that should not happen. Like to give a simple example, they say like after the Model Code of Conduct come into existence, now they are in power, so they are announcing हम इस यहाँ पे 4-lane रास्ता बनाएंगे, ये allow नहीं किया जाएगा. Okay, or या फिर वो काम शुरू कर रहा है. So this will not be allowed. The minister must not combine the official visits with the election work. Okay, this is very important. If you someday I will take a lecture on emergency provisions, and in that emergency provisions I will discuss in detail as to why Indira Gandhi, what happened before the emergency. Okay, it was Indira Gandhi was accused. Okay, she was initially accused of using an election government machinery for the election purpose when there was a Model Code of Conduct, and that was upheld by the High Court of Allahabad. Okay, and that's why that case again went into the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court said, okay, you can be the member of parliament, you can be the Prime Minister, but you cannot vote into the House. And at that the same day, Indira Gandhi announced the emergency. So that is altogether a different story. I will come to that in detail in some other times. But for here, understand, if Prime Minister Modi is going to come into Maharashtra, okay, and there he is going to conduct a rally, that time he should not be using the state machinery or the government machinery for that sabha, because that is a political work and not a government work. To give a simple example, or any person, okay, any person in the minister is coming from प्रचार के लिए आ रहा है, तो प्रचार को जब वो आ रहा है तो वो इसके लिए नहीं होगा. He will not be there to look into. He will not be in the official capacity as a minister. Rather than he will be just a pracharak. He will not utilize the government machinery for that. He will not even. आपने देखा होगा जब भी elections वगैरह announce करते हैं, आचार संहिता अभी चालू है महाराष्ट्र में, because there are elections to the graduate constituencies and all those things. तो अपनी गाड़ी वीडी भी submit करना पड़ता है सब कुछ. So that is the Model Code of Conduct, which is very important. If they are utilizing the government machinery, okay, so then obviously they are at the advantage. So to reduce that, this provision is there in the Model Code of Conduct. The party must avoid advertising at the cost of public exchange. Very important. Election में पैसा खर्च करना है, करो advertising पे, but वो सरकारी पैसा नहीं होना चाहिए. Or using official mass media for publicity. Okay, it cannot use Doordarshan, okay, for the publicity or their own. अगर दूरदर्शन पे भी suppose उनकी ad आ रही है, तो all the parties should be given equal timings and all those things. This plays a very important role. Private channels के हम बात नहीं कर सकते, पर लेकिन officially allowed नहीं होगा. On achievements to improve chances of victory in the elections, ministers and other authorities must not announce any financial grants or promise any construction of road, provision of drinking water, etc. Like these are very older ones कि आज भी हमारे यहाँ पे इलेक्शंस पानी रास्ता इन्हीं पे फाइट किए जाते हैं. तो अगर ये हम इसके आगे अभी तक नहीं गए हैं, we understand we are not at that level. और दूसरा है कि हमारे यहाँ पे पाकिस्तान है, वो तो सभी पार्टी करती है, okay, लेकिन जो बेसिक चीजें हैं उन्हीं पे हम फाइट करते रह रहे हैं. So after 70 years you can simply say elections उसी मुद्दे पे चल रहे हैं कि हम रास्ते बनाएंगे, ये बनाएंगे. So कब बनाएंगे पता नहीं, but है फाइनेंशियल ग्रांट्स वगैरह आप अनाउंस नहीं कर सकते. तो ये कितने पीरियड के लिए हो रहा है? तो अगर आप 5 साल की सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट है तो उसका 1 साल ये कर नहीं पा रही है, तो इसकी वजह से इशू है. आई होप यू आर गेटिंग द इशू. In the 5 years term, 1 year is almost 1 year or 10 months at least are going where the government cannot do these things. If government is not able to do this thing, then what is the use of having 5 years term? 10 महीने तो उसके इलेक्शन में जा रहा है. So because of that, Modi ji is stressing on this, stressing more on this. But again, there are negatives to it also, and as we have seen in the UPSC question, the negative part was asked. The other parties must be allowed to use public spaces and rest houses, and these must not be monopolized by the party of power. Okay, obviously, इसके लिए provision अभी ऐसा है, you should not at all use the government resources in the election. आप कोई भी हो, लेकिन आप इलेक्शंस के टाइम पे सरकारी गेस्ट हाउस नहीं यूज कर सकते. You will not be allowed to use the government guest house at that time. Okay, or any Amdar Niwas and all those things in the time of elections. So that is there. And then in election manifesto is the one, another point, the last point. It was added in 2013. These guidelines prohibit parties from making promises. Okay, parties that exert an undue influence on the voters, and suggest that manifesto also indicate the means to achieve promise. Okay, ऐसे influence नहीं करना कि we'll do these kind of things, ये करेंगे वो करेंगे. Obviously manifesto should be, लेकिन हम लोग start to begin with, actually how many of we read the manifesto is again a debatable thing. We just vote again depending on our biases. So but these are the guidelines कि promise that exert an influence करने वाले promises नहीं होने चाहिए. Okay, like for example a manifesto is having something which is on religious lines, okay, which will reduce, which will come to what you can say, which will influence the voter in terms of religion, in terms of caste, in terms of some other things. So these are not the things that should be allowed. Okay, Atish, I will take your question after some time at last, and please post anyone who has a question, please post it publicly. So what happens is that I don't have to repeat the question. Okay, and everyone knows the question. Otherwise, for some people, it may get skipped out. Now, what changes have been recommended in relation to the model code conduct since the last general election? Okay, that is, you can say 2014 and 15. इसके बीच में किए गए थे. Now, it said that the 2015 Law Commission in its report on electoral reforms noted that the model code of conduct prohibits the issue of advertisement at the cost of public exchequer in newspaper, media during the election period. However, while following these things, it was observed that the model code of conduct comes into operation only from the date on which the commission announces the elections. But what about before that? Okay, what about before the announcement of elections? The government can spend a large amount of money on advertising, which is done. Yes, it is done. You all know. कितनी बड़ी-बड़ी ad आती है newspapers में and all those things. So election model code of conduct existence में आने के बाद तो नहीं कर सकते, लेकिन उससे पहले एक दिन भी आपने कर दिया तो इसलिए अगर 2 महीने से आप करते आ रहे तो influence तो हो रहा है ना. Okay, so the government can release advertisement prior to the announcement of election. It noted that this gives an advantage. It was noted down that it gives an advantage to the ruling party. Yes, obviously, because it is having the money at its disposal, it is having the time, okay, and it knows. Generally, everyone has a rough idea कब elections लगने वाला है. So उसके पहले के 2-3 महीने तो मैं पूरी advertising करूँगा तो. That is what was supposed to be limited. So it gives an undue advantage, undue advantage to other parties. So it acts reversely to the other parties and all those things. So therefore, the commission in 2015 itself recommended that a restriction should be imposed on the government-sponsored advertisement for up to 6 months before the expiry of the assembly. So like if in May, the house is going to dissolve, it's normal term उसका end होने वाला है, तो उससे 6 महीने पहले ही एडवर्टाइजिंग बंद करने के लिए प्रोविजन बोला था. अभी तक उस पे काम नहीं हुआ है. Okay, but it was recommended. But I think that is, you may realize how important it is. Then further, however, it stated that an exception may be carved out for advertisements highlighting the government's poverty alleviation program or any health-related schemes. Then again, every law, there is certain exception in India. I hope you have understood model code of conduct. Do you? Any questions with this regard? Now the last point in the model code of conduct, and then we will go on to the simultaneous elections. Okay. The model code of conduct is it legally binding? No. it is not enforceable by law. However, there are certain provisions under the Model Code of Conduct which may be enforced through invoking certain provisions from certain other acts, like that of the Indian Penal Code of 1860, Code of Criminal Procedure of 1973, and Representation of People Act 1951. So Model Code of Conduct does not have liability of legality from the law's point of view. You have violated this, so now let's force on this. But there are other provisions in the Indian Penal Code, Criminal Procedure Code, and the Representation of People's Act of 1951, from which you can actually impose certain restrictions and all those things. The Election Commission has argued against making the Model Code of Conduct legally binding. Why? It has, the Election Commission itself doesn't want it to be legally binding, because when elections must be completed within relative period of time. If the election, these things are there, then the Election Commission will also have to deal with these matters. And what will happen? The election process may get delayed. Like for example, if a certain person has filed a false affidavit and certain person is now complaining. Now, whether to continue or not to continue, that will again be a different thing. So to stop that, basically, what we are finding that Election Commission does not demand this process to be legally binding. Now that can also be considered a loophole. Remember this as a loophole again. And the judicial proceedings typically take longer. Therefore, it is not feasible to make enforceable by law. Because generally, उस period में judges, judiciary अपना judgment देगा, ये हो नहीं सकता. तो फिर क्या? वो it's like that. अभी जो ये चल रहा है ना reservation का, अभी stay सबने बोल दिया हो गया reservation. कोर्ट में गया stay आ गया. अभी वो कब होगा पता नहीं. तो उस तरह से ये जनरली चलता है. वो ना हो इसकी वजह से इलेक्शन कमीशन इसे लीगली बाइंडिंग नहीं कहना चाहता. On the other hand, in 2013, the Standing Committee on Personal Public Grievance Law and Justice, very big name, recommended making the Model Code of Conduct binding. So it was recommended in 2013, but nothing has been done. So it is again the same that I have been telling you. With that, moving on to another point. Now let's see simultaneous elections in India. Okay. Now, what is simultaneous elections? So simultaneous elections is defined. We can define simultaneous elections as structuring the Indian election cycle in a manner such that the elections to the Lok Sabha and the state assemblies are synchronized together. Okay. So they are the Lok Sabha elections and the state assembly elections, they are held simultaneously. That is the simple point. Okay, it does not include the elections to the local bodies, because Election Commission of India is not involved in the local bodies election. It is the State Election Commission which is involved in the local bodies election. So remember that. With some election or the other throughout the year, normal activities of the government come to a standstill because of Code of Conduct, Model Code of Conduct. So that is the point that Prime Minister also has been stressing, that he will also be stressing. If political parties collectively think we can change it, former President Pranab Mukherjee had said. Okay, so Pranab Mukherjee, earlier that quote was from Pranab Mukherjee, had said that if political parties come to a consensus, then actually we can think to that. But whether political parties will come to consensus, that is debatable, because at the end we will also see the legal provisions. The Election Commission in its annual report has also suggested, as early as 1983, okay, so Election Commission in 1983 itself has suggested that the system should be evolved so that the elections of Lok Sabha and the state assemblies are held simultaneously. So it's not a new demand. Okay, it has been the demand since a very very old times. The Justice B.P. Jeevan Reddy Law Commission, in its 117th report, that is the Law Commission's report of 1999, made a reference where they said, we must go back to the situation where the elections to Lok Sabha and all the legislative assemblies are held at once. So the point to tell over here is that this is not a new demand. This demand is there since very long time, but we are preparing it because Prime Minister of India has again reiterated into it. Okay. In 79, that is one of the most of the data that I am telling you after this is from the Niti Aayog's report of 2017, which was specifically for looking into the matter of simultaneous elections. and they have discussed a lot. There is a detailed report available on the website also. But if you follow the lecture and the notes that will be provided to you with this, or the slides, we can simply say it is enough for you. You don't need to go into the report. The lecture is basically the summarization of that itself. So I hope you understand that it is not a new phenomenon. Now let us see some of the facts regarding the elections in India. The first general election to the House of People and all the state legislative assemblies were held in 1951-52. So first Lok Sabha and the legislative assemblies, all the elections were held simultaneously. That practice continued in 3 subsequent elections. So for every state and the Lok Sabha elections, the list coincided till 1967. Okay. Now, after 1967, we all know, because of some legislative assemblies, emergencies were applied because of certain issues and all those things. 1968 and 69, the cycle was broken. So it was in 68 and 69 that the cycle was broken. So from prelims point of view, just remember the first fact that from 1951-52 to 1967, all the 3 elections were simultaneously held for the state legislative assembly as well as for the Lok Sabha. In 1970, the Lok Sabha was itself dissolved prematurely. You all know that. You must be knowing, you have studied polity. So it was prematurely dissolved, and the first elections were held in 1971. So again, the cycle is breaking, and that cycle continued to break for further and further and further. Thus, the first, second, and third Lok Sabha enjoyed full terms. But after that, it was very rare. The term of 5th Lok Sabha was extended till 1976 under Article 352. So एक बार premature क्या कहते हैं, प्रीमैच्योर लोकसभा भी हुई है, और एक तरह से हम क्या देख रहे हैं, तो लोकसभा का टर्म भी एक्सटेंड किया गया बिकॉज ऑफ द इमरजेंसी. आफ्टर दैट द 8th, 9th, 8th, 10th, 14th and 15th Lok Sabha would complete their full terms. The 6th, 7th, 9th, 11th, 12th and 13th Lok Sabha were dissolved prematurely. So again, remember, this is just like a fact, an absurd facts that I am giving to you. Whether they will be required or not, I don't know. But whenever the UPSC is in the mood to surprise you, they can ask these type of questions. That's their objective always. So we can find it from them. Now, as a result of premature dissolution and the extension of terms of both Lok Sabha and also of the state legislative assemblies, for the last 48 years, almost 48 years, there have been separate elections to the Lok Sabha and the state legislative assemblies, and the cycle of simultaneous elections has been disrupted. So that is the reason that why we are not having simultaneous elections, because there are constitutional provisions which protect the state center, the election process and all those things. So what we will need in simple terms is a constitutional amendment, a significant constitutional amendment, and that's why this task is difficult. Understanding, once the cycle was broken, it is very difficult to bring back the cycle. But we have to agree to the terms that we will see now, the positives, okay, that simultaneous elections do have a benefit. At the same time, there are negatives too. But let's see the positives first. That first positive is that it would reduce the massive expenditure incurred for the conduct of separate elections each year. Just simply you compare the amount of money required to conduct the elections for Lok Sabha and also for the state legislative assemblies. Okay, every year election commission has to go through that. So that amount of money, why we have to spend it? So that is a positive. You will be able to save the money which is required in the n number of elections. Now the simultaneous elections to the Lok Sabha and the state assemblies also help ruling parties to focus on governance. Okay, instead of being constantly in election mode, that is what we can see. Like, think like if there was no provision of Bihar election नहीं होता, तो वैक्सीन का क्या हो रहा होता? Okay, like वैक्सीन फ्री में दी जाती, बांटी जाती, वो प्रॉमिस क्यों करना पड़ता? हम फ्री में बांटेंगे. Prime Minister was there today in Pune, but you know that vaccine and all those things. So every time government has to go into mode. नहीं, 2 महीने बाद इस स्टेट का इलेक्शन है, इस स्टेट का इलेक्शन है. So every time it becomes somewhere or the other a hindrance, and that we all have to agree. So don't worry about elections, because elections are going to happen at 5 years. Okay, what we have to worry on the government. So that is the other positives. Now, why it is there? Because there is a model code of conduct. The imposition of code puts on, this model code of conduct basically puts on many months at a stretch. It can be depending on the state in which the elections are to be carried out. Like for example, in the Maoist states, the elections are carried out in various phases. Okay, or northeast, or because of security reasons and all those things, elections stretch to a very long amount of time. So that again, what happens, the entire development programs and the activities of union and the state government are paralyzed. Okay, most of the times in the poll bound state, it even affects the normal day-to-day governance, normal day-to-day, because everything, like we all know, governments will not declare the results, will not create the new appointments and all those things just simply by giving the reason, okay, Achar Sanhita hai. So Achar Sanhita, it leads to a policy paralysis. As obviously I have given you the figures कि कितने states में कैसे कैसे elections होने वाले हैं 2019 से लेके 2023 तक, आप तक realize करेंगे कि ये कितने बार हो रहा है. So on an average, if you are saying 10 months or 12 months, that is a huge period in 5 years term. कि आपका पूरा उसमें election में ही जा रहा है. So frequent elections lead to the disruption of normal public life. Okay, and impact the functioning of essential services. Everyone is in election mode. Understand? Nowadays, like we are much more used to elections. Either there will be Lok Sabha के बाद हो गया विधान सभा के बाद आ रहा है कोई legislative assembly का election, फिर आ रहा है आपका local bodies का election, ग्राम पंचायत, municipalities. Like next year मुंबई municipal corporation का election है. Okay, पुणे का भी होगा उसके बाद. Okay, PCMC का होगा. Okay, so these are like every time and every now and then we have to be in that mode, election mode, and obviously you know how election period disrupts our life. किसी की एक सभा भी होती है, हमारी लाइफ कितनी डिस्टर्ब होती है वो आप जानते हैं. कॉमन सिटीजन के बारे में बात कर रहा हूँ, नॉट अबाउट द कार्यकर्तास. Most of the time in the poll bound state, it even if affects normal day-to-day life. That is what I am saying. Disruption of the normal public life is there. Impact of functioning of essential services, because all the services are involved over there. Government machinery is now invested, because just because election commission does not have its own staff, okay, you must be knowing that that is one of the limitations. Election commission does not have its own staff, and it's not even feasible to have a full-time staff, because again you have to, it will be a, what you can say, it will be a load on the exchequer. So rather than that, this could be, this simultaneous elections could prove beneficial in that class. And this such kind of disruptions would lead to limited to certain predetermined period of time if elections are held simultaneously. So we all know, like अभी 5 साल बाद ही होने वाला है election, तो तब हम कुछ तो analyze कर पाएंगे. Now elections are also the polarizing facts. Like in India specifically, the elections are polarizing events. So every now and then we can see that there are tensions that are built up in the community. So if you are having simultaneous elections, those tensions are always there. So you don't provide a scope where you can get rid of the tensions and you could actually have a harmony. Okay, so forced to talk politically, like we all know how leaders are doing. So rather than if particular event is happening, every time if it is an election year, everything will be politicized. Best example is Sushant Singh Rajput case. Okay, agreed. Abhi koi baat kar raha hai. Okay, you should be aware, right? Abhi koi baat nahi kar raha na uske upar. No one is now interested into what happened to Sushant Singh Rajput, but everyone was knowing that is for the Bihar case, Bihar election, Bihar Kalal, and all those things. So pura mechanism isme hua kya? So everything is being talked politically. Okay. Moving ahead, like COVID got reduced to what you can say, COVID, prior to COVID, people went for the Bihar election, or Bihar election became the significant one. And right now also it is the same mode, because next year we are going to have the Bengal elections. Okay, so the significant states are coming up for the election. So obviously it is creating a problem. Simultaneous elections would also free the crucial manpower. Just imagine how much of manpower is involved. Teachers burdened with election duties, police personnel burdened with the election duties, CRPF paramilitary forces burdened with the election duties. Why it should be? And if it is like for the period of every now and then, if it has to be there, and this manpower is not utilized for something constructive. Okay, so if they are deployed in a, that's the point, simply. Okay, I hope you have understood the positives. You have to write an answer. Question pucha gaya hai. Now let us see challenges. Okay, the first one is operational feasibility. Okay, we are taking very, very technically. Okay, not in vague way. The simultaneous elections are almost nearly impossible to implement, as it would mean arbitrarily curtailing or extending the terms of existing legislature. Now, this is very, very complicated. This is legal point of view से. Legal point of view से सोचो इसको कि किसी assembly को constitution ने guarantee किया है 5 साल का term. Agreed? 5 साल का term दिया है. अभी आप उस assembly को कैसे बोलोगे कि नहीं अभी आप dissolve हो जाओ? The assembly may not agree to this, or how you are going to extend the term of certain assembly. Okay, so technically operational feasibility means what? Technically or legally how difficult it is. So we need a very larger consensus. Okay, it can happen if, like we can say, if there is one party rule in India, simply like every state is now having BJP. So obviously this BJP's leadership will say, okay, now you resign. But that will not happen when we have different governments at different states. Okay, and there are. So as Atish has asked me in the question about the legal point of about the regional parties, many a times regional parties will not be agreeing to this point. And if you see most of the southern states, like for example, Tamil Nadu, AIDMK, DMK, or in Telangana, TRS or YSR Jagan Reddy's party, okay, or in Kerala Communist Party, which is national party, but still in Maharashtra even. Okay, in Maharashtra, why will the government which is created will now agree that okay, simultaneous elections lene to abhi khatam karta hai? Because everyone is looking into the election in terms of power. Abhi power hai uske paas, तो power बढ़ाने के लिए problem नहीं है. लेकिन किसी assembly का अगर power कम करना है तो ये problem है. And how that would be possible then? So that's why there is an operational feasibility. Okay, legal difficulties. Okay, such a measure would undermine the democracy and the federalism. Because अगर center ये करने जाता है तो it will obviously undermine the federalism. The second point, Law Commission in its report has suggested an alternative. Okay, now this is interesting because you have to write a constructive answer. So for a constructive answer, this point will play a significant role. What it has said, just categorize the states. Categorize the states which are having the elections which are in proximity of the general Lok Sabha elections. Okay. Categorize states based on proximity to the next general elections and have one round of state assembly polls with the next Lok Sabha election and another round for remaining states 30 months later. But this still does not guarantee about the midterm polls. Understand, what does the election law commission has said? जो proximity में है उनको general commission general election के साथ club कर दो और जो बाकी रह जाते हैं जिनके इलेक्शंस बाद में उनके 30 महीने बाद इलेक्शंस कर लो तो बाद में क्या हो जाएगा फिर we will have a sync after few years. Okay, we will have a sync of this cycle will be created after few years. But then again there is no guarantee. Like, is there a guarantee of Mahavikas Aghadi government in Maharashtra? How many of you think there is a guarantee of Mahavikas Aghadi government? Okay, we don't know how long they can agree. So because of that, it is like difficult to apply. Then the deployment of security forces. Now this is an interesting point. At one time I have said the deployment of negative points of applying large amount of manpower and all those things. And at the same time I'm saying about the challenge. The deployment of security forces and officials in 7 lakh polling stations located in widely varying geographic and climatic conditions can be a tedious task. Okay, so deployment of security forces to that scale, because now you are not only having the Lok Sabha election, but state assembly elections, and at every state you have to, your work increases by two times. So obviously that number, it's going to be difficult. The next point is, it is considered to be against democracy. Some political parties argue that it may influence the voter behavior in a manner that would end up voting on national issues. Very important point. This is where the UPSC asks the questions. Like, for example, do you think Maharashtra election should be fought on the principle of Pakistan, on the foreign policy issues? National election can be fought on the foreign policy issues, right? Agreeing. But can Maharashtra election be fought on the foreign policy issue? कि पाकिस्तान के साथ ये किया उसके हिसाब से आप नहीं कर सकते ना. Can Pakistan be an issue in Maharashtra's election? It has been there, but should it be there? Because Maharashtra will have altogether different issues. Tamil Nadu will have its own regional issues. Kerala will have its own regional issues. Uttar Pradesh may have its different issues. But now, as the elections are happening simultaneously, there is a chance that people voting behavior may change and people will see the national issue. Because national issue will resonate more into the people's minds than that of the local issues. Like even today in our elections, Pakistan resonates. Okay, it should resonate, but whether do you want Pakistan to be a significant player in the Jilla Parishad election? No. Or what are India-US ties? It will not play the role in Jilla Parishad election, understand? Or even in Maharashtra's election. So this mindset can change. That is one very important point. State as such have different issues. Nation as one entity has different issues. Nation will have different answers to different issues. States will have different issues and different answers. Like for example, there are because in state subject we have different issues. Okay, like agriculture, irrigation can be an issue, drought can be an issue for a particular state, but all those things may get subsided and people may start voting on the national issues, and that will be what you can say, that will not be good, because the representation that we have to make in India has to be according to the like, when you elect a person, you don't elect anyone as a prime minister, you elect a person who is going to represent your interest. But now you have elected that person in the interest of the nation, then he will work whether he is accountable to you or not. That will be debated, because he has you have voted him on altogether different lines. There is a candidate who is from the major party and his leaders and all those things are raising the national issues. You agree with those national issues. And there is another person who is being voted to power, who is bringing out the local issues, whom you should be voting about. That is what may change. That may change. Nowadays, what we think, हमारे यहाँ का, like if you know, legislative assembly elections में होता है नहीं, इस MLA ने हमारे लिए काम ही नहीं किया, रास्ता ही ठीक से नहीं किया, तो हम इसको गिरा देंगे. Okay, शायद से वहाँ नहीं होगा when it is simultaneous election. So impact of voter behavior may be different. So marginalizing the regional parties, yes, Atish, it will marginalize the regional parties, and obviously regional parties have played a very significant role. That can be a discussion of at another time, how regional parties have been significant in India and what is their role, but they may be marginalized. Now the election issues, this is what I was saying, the election issues are different, okay, understand, for state and for the center. For Bihar, it is different, for Maharashtra, it is different, for Tamil Nadu, it is different, for Karnataka, it is different, for Uttar Pradesh, it is different. But when you bring in but all these states are having one common national issue, like for example, terrorism or internal security. These are the national issues, but are those issues at the state level? That has to be thought about, and that will lead to diminished accountability. And that was the specific question that was asked. So UPSC specifically took this point of the report. This is from the Niti Aayog's report itself. Okay, Niti Aayog's report itself, and they asked the question in 2017 about the simultaneous elections. And what is that? Having to face the electorate more than once every 5 years enhances the accountability of politicians. Like we all know, there are various leaders, like they don't even talk in Lok Sabha. They just sit over there and they are never raising any questions. There are many leaders like this. Okay, I cannot give you an example, but when I was a journalist, I have come across, when I was reporting in Delhi, I came across certain people, certain leaders from Maharashtra itself, who have like not even opened up all the files and all those things. So there are. Okay, so it cannot be rejected. So jobs are also created. So account of politicians and keep them on their toes. So just like they know 5 years के बाद ही देखना है, so 5 साल बाद ही देखना है. So that is something different. Now, या फिर इससे best example देना तो like MLAs who have got elected for the first time after spending so much amount of money in the Maharashtra Legislative Assembly elections, and if the government would not have found, then 6 महीने बाद फिर से election उनके तो indicator लग जाएंगे ना, अभी फिर से पैसा खर्चा करना पड़ेगा क्या? हमारी टर्म जीत के आए 6 महीने के लिए, ऐसा नहीं होगा. So this can what you can say, these are the challenges. Like the elected representative may not take the people as he is supposed to. It will decrease the accountability of the people. Okay, because he thinks so directly after the 5 years, so he can change the whole narrative in 1 year. He will not have to think about the 5 years. But when you are in the mode, this election का impact, Lok Sabha का impact, Lok Sabha member अगर काम नहीं कर रहा है तो ठीक है, मैं MLA को दिखाऊंगा फिर. So obviously MLA has to relate it with the MP. So in that way, as we are interrelated, this phenomenon becomes altogether different. Finally, a lot of jobs are also created during the elections, which boost the economy at the grassroots levels. But this point cannot be highlighted to that level. Yes, it does, and this is stated by the this one, Niti Aayog's report, that many jobs are created during elections. But I don't think that we need this kind of employment, seasonal employment, which is never good or healthy for the economy as such. Moving on. Now, what has Law Commission recommended? Law Commission, the second point it has recommended, very important point that Law Commission has recommended regarding simultaneous elections. It is that their no confidence motion should be replaced by vote of no confidence through amendments in Lok Sabha and state assemblies rules of business. Sorry, no confidence motion should be replaced with constructive vote of no confidence motion. Okay, I just misplaced the word constructive. So constructive means what? See, if that happens, then what will happen? Lok Sabha or a state legislative assembly will have a fixed 5-year terms. One may not be able to form the government, but the other one has to make the government. Like right now, let's take the best example of Maharashtra. In Maharashtra, 3 parties have come together to form a government, right? BJP has been sidelined. Okay, so BJP is trying to get into the power. Okay, if it gets into power, okay, fine, we can continue for another 3 years. Okay, sorry, 4 years. 4 years are remaining. Okay, but what happens that these 3 parties, they are not agreeing on common agenda and they decide that they will not support each other. So neither BJP is able to make the government, neither these Mahavikas Aghadi will be able to stay in the government. So what will happen? The assembly has to be dissolved. So if the assembly has to be dissolved, then what is the point? So again the election. So do we want the election after 1 year? So constructive vote of no confidence will do what? If you have to, the government will be there, whoever it may be, but the government will be there for the 5 years. That's for sure. Okay, anyone, if you are bringing no confidence motion, then bring also the what you can say, who is going to be. If not him, then who is going to be. That also has to be highlighted. So that is that. And also the anti-defection law should be diluted to some extent. Okay, that is one other recommendation that has been given by the Law Commission, that it should be diluted to prevent stalemate in case of hung assembly or parliament. Like if you are having a hung assembly or a parliament, no one is able to form a government, and at least at that time there should be a scope that some people may jump to the other party, whether you agree or disagree, but for maintaining the stability and to reduce the election expenditure and election mechanism, reducing that, this could be seen in a positive light. You may see that in negative light, but think from the benefit that it is going to give. In a hung assembly, what is going to happen? There cannot be a government. In state assemblies, mostly what happens? President's rule is applied. President's rule is not justified, right? You need to have your own state government. So why to have a president's rule? So instead of that, let some people migrate to other parties. But that may lead to the horse trading, but that has been done. In Karnataka and Madhya Pradesh, it is happening. It has happened already. They got re-elected. Okay, anti-defection was applied to them, but they got re-elected. So in a way, the government is continuing. The best thing is what? इसी का भी है, लेकिन 4 साल तक 5 साल तक stable government. The government, again understand, the institutions remain. People go and come. लोग आते जाते रहेंगे, लेकिन इंस्टीट्यूशन रहेगा. तो इंस्टीट्यूशन अगर रहना है, पार्लियामेंट नेहरू से लेके मोदी तक है, तो लोग आते जाते रहेंगे. इंपॉर्टेंट ये है कि पार्लियामेंट रहना चाहिए और पार्लियामेंट स्टेबल होना चाहिए. Okay, so see that in positive, bit of a positive line. And there also it also recommended that statutory limit of 6 months for issuance of notification of general elections may be extended for securing flexibility as a one-time measure. So like say Maharashtra elections are happening just after 4 months from the Lok Sabha election. So why not extend or reduce? Okay, rather than putting it on the whims of the political parties, can there be a law for that? So that is what the recommendations were. Now, what are the constitutional provisions related to this issue? First of all, Article 83(2) of the Indian Constitution, and it provides that a normal term of 5 years for the House of People, that is Lok Sabha. So Article 83(2) of the Constitution provides for the normal term of 5 years. Now, this is constitutional provision, so you have to make a constitutional amendment. Simple thing. And next is same way, 172(1) provides the tenure of 5 years for the state legislative assembly also. Okay, so these tenures cannot be extended beyond in cases of emergency. Emergency provisions that can be applied for state emergency, president's rule, state emergency, or the national emergency. Apart from that, they cannot be extended. They have to get dissolved. These are the technical loopholes. So for that, what you require multiple constitutional amendments. And you all know the process of constitutional amendment is not a simple one. Okay, understand, the process of constitutional amendment is not a simple process. Will there be such a consensus? It is really debatable. Right now, do you think there is a political consensus in India that they will agree to some common agenda? No one is agreeing even on whether to conduct the exam or not to conduct an exam. Okay, so right now, I don't think there is reality. In reality, if I have to tell you, they are not agreeing on whether to conduct the exam or not to conduct the exam. And they are going to the Supreme Court to decide on whether the exam should be conducted or not. So with these kind of what you can say differences in the federal structure, whereas we always have been speaking about cooperative federalism, we have been finding there is no cooperative federalism, but a very discriminatory federalism or destructive federalism. Just see what happened to the CBI case also. Now 6 or 7 states have taken away the power to, they have to get the approval from the state to investigate. The state is now saying that we have arbitrary power whether to allow the CBI in a particular case or not. So with this kind of thing, I don't think in recent times it's possible, but surely from the UPSC's point of view and from the larger viewpoint, if we are saying, and if we are seeing the democracy in a constructive way, then obviously this is the answer. Okay, that we can go, we should think about a simultaneous election. So the Prime Minister also knows the limitations. He has spoken about that. But Prime Minister also knows the constitutional limitations of this process. And we hope in some times or the other what happens, it will be there. But it will be there for the exam. It will be there in the docs. Okay. The Election Commission has suggested that even the Election Commission has suggested that the term of Lok Sabha should commence and end on the predetermined date. Now this can be another recommendation. This can be an answer. Okay, that you should have predetermined dates. Okay, just like in American presidential system or in Britain, like is date pe election hoga? Apart from, but obviously there may be certain situations because India being vast, geographical diversity and all those things, there will be a lot of issues. But at least we can have, this is the end date of the Lok Sabha. So if that is there, then it does not depend on the, what you can say, it does not have to depend on when the government is created and all those things. Election Commission will also be prepared. The election assembly will dissolve, the election dates will be fixed. So it will be a bit more systematic and it will not be prematurely done. Okay, just like, or many a times it is accused that it is favoring one political party or the other political party as such. If the House is still dissolved, the President can run the government for the rest of term. That is, their provisions are there. So there are technical difficulties, but it can be resolved basically. So these are some of the constitutional and statutory provisions, including certain recommendations that can be done. But at the core, understand how difficult the task is. Okay, at the end, just understand how difficult the task is to have a constitutional amendment. Okay, in conclusion, we as a UPSC aspirant, we should be for the simultaneous elections because its benefits outweigh its limitations. But the challenges are real challenges, which to overcome those challenges, we need a larger national consensus. And to have a larger national consensus, we need a political leader who actually builds the nation, okay, and does not divide the nation. Okay, that is the point. I hope you have understood. And with that, we end the session, today's session. You can practice writing the answers. Already the question has been asked by UPSC in 2017. Just write down the answer and send it to me. If you have any questions after this, you can ask me or you can post it. And I will try as much as possible to answer those.